Starbound is, in a way, the spiritual successor to Terraria. The game is being created by the indie developers Chucklefish. Among them is some of the old Terraria devs. That, as well as a number of other reasons, is why the game is so easy to compare with Terraria. But I said the game was still being created, and I'm correct in saying that. Though you can now buy Starbound over the Steam Early Access program, the game is still in beta, which essentially should mean two things to early purchasers. 1. The game is unfinished, which means that there will be bugs and that everything is subject to change. 2. If you pay for an unfinished product that fails to live up to expectations, you have to understand that the game may continue to do so. There is no guarantee that the game will get any better. Buying a game whilst it is still unfinished is a risk. The game will freeze, the game will crash, the game can stop working correctly at any time, and you should expect it to. So what is Starbound? Starbound takes place in space, and so you are able to travel between planets as long as you have the fuel for it, looking for different resources and more land to explore. The game is mining and resource gathering, but one of the first changes that you'll notice from Starbound's predecessor, Terraria, is that now a food mechanic has been implemented. Having to eat food theoretically makes the game more challenging, especially at the very beginning, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. The game itself is actually quite difficult, and even more so when you overextend yourself into areas you're not supposed to be in yet. The game's progression system means that to delve deeper and to find better loot more safely, you first have to go and gather the resources to equip yourself with better armor, weapons, and tools first. The game is arguably more difficult than Terraria. Some people will appreciate that, others likely won't. Difficulty is definitely subjective. Many people enjoy a challenging experience. Many others, however, would prefer a more relaxed, casual game, and this game isn't for them. The speed at which you die in some circumstances is ridiculously fast, and it means that a single screw-up could mean your life. But there's another reason as to why the game is so difficult. There is no passive health regen. Unless you can find health regen on gear later into the game, or if they choose to implement it, there are a very limited number of ways for you to regenerate your health in Starbound. Again, this is not an objectively bad design choice, however there are undoubtedly going to be many people who do not appreciate this decision. An easy game? This is not. A rewarding game? A fun game? Definitely. There are still reliable ways to regenerate your health. Bandages recover some HP, some food will give you some health, and sleeping in a bed or a tent will slowly heal you. But in all likelihood, you will be dying a considerable amount. Right now, the only penalty for dying is that you lose a chunk of your pixels. Pixels are the currency of the game, but they've been made marginally more important, as you need pixels to craft quite a lot of gear in the game. Armor and weapons, as well as other things like the distress beacon, they all cost pixels to make, which makes dying something that you should avoid. In Terraria, if you're deep underground and you want to get back to the surface, then killing yourself is a legitimate idea. In Starbound, not so much. There is multiplayer, and if you want to make the game slightly more easy on yourself, then there's nothing like having some of your closest friends act like human shields. You can visit one another's ships and explore planets and construct bases to defend yourself against the dangerous and fairly diverse enemies. The enemies are, as previously stated, very dangerous, and they seem to have actual visual abilities such as charge and vomit blood instead of the most common attack from Terraria, which was walk at player, deal damage. These abilities actually make the gameplay and the combat of the game more hectic, especially when you're constantly monitoring your health and or you're outnumbered. Some enemies, even at early stages of the game, can use 2 or more of these abilities. The enemies themselves are all alien, and are far more interesting to look at and kill than zombies or skeletons. The mobs are all fairly colourful and diverse in shape and sizes. There's also a fair number of them, which makes the combat more varied. Even in the earliest stages of the game, when you're still learning the ropes, you'll encounter several different monsters, some of which are passive and friendly, and some of which want to desperately tear your intestines from the rest of your body. The atmosphere of the game is fantastic. The art style is very enjoyable to look at and is a good example of how pixel-style art can be done well. The game's so colourful, and it really helps to make the game fun to play, but what really lends to the atmosphere of the game is its music. It suits the game incredibly well, and can be very peaceful or very nerve-wracking. Shit's about to hit the fan when the tranquil music fades out and the music of battle begins. But what do you do in the game? Well, you could just go and make a city if you wanted, but that's more in the vein of Minecraft. No, Starbound focuses instead on the combat, crafting, and survival aspects of the new genre created by Minecraft and its bazillion clones. The inclusion of both food and heat bars really lends to the survivor feel of the game, especially since dying drains you of your pixels. That's not to say you couldn't go and make a cool looking house if you wanted to though, but the presence of your spaceship makes houses mostly unnecessary, especially if you keep moving from planet to planet. Now the planets are all different. As well as having procedurally generated terrain, differing fauna, and different mobs, planets have different difficulty levels. That means if you're bored of a planet because it's too easy or you've explored all you've wanted to, all you have to do is go to a new, more difficult planet. The planets themselves are large, and there's a lot of them. There's plenty to go see and explore. One big problem that I have with the game is how long it can take you to mine certain things. I understand that the way to resolve this issue is to get better gear, but first impressions really matter. If you take the default gathering tool and try to chop down a tree, it will take forever. Yes, you can make an axe almost immediately, but new players might get turned off by how long it takes to gather resources. The crafting system of the game is also fairly self-explanatory. It's nothing we haven't seen before, but it does its job. The fact that they also added in some utility to the crafting system is also very appreciated. Instead of creating one item after another or being forced to hold your mouse down like in Terraria, Starbound just lets you number the amount of an item you want, which is definitely an improvement. There's also item tabs, so it's easy to find certain items. You can look for weapons and armor individually, so it's just a cleaner system. There's also some character customization, which is always important in this kind of game. There's several different races and a solid amount of customization options. That you can also choose your character's stance is a nice bonus that I wouldn't have expected. The game's questing system is a fantastic way to portray a tutorial. It teaches you all the basics behind the game, it'll get you started off and on your way, but it also doesn't constrict you. If you don't want to follow it, there's nothing stopping you from just going off and doing your own thing. Now, I'm enjoying Starbound so far. It's fun, however there are a few things that need to be sorted out. I've had multiple freezes, and the game crashing is still a very common occurrence. These have to be sorted out before launch, but I will retain my fate for now. There are other tiny little nitpicks that I have with the game, but most of them are just personal little subjective opinions, like that I think it takes too long to mine. Some of them I think even have fixes inside the game that I just haven't figured out yet. For example, placing blocks. When you attempt to place down a block, the game forces you to place them down in a set of 4. It took me a considerable amount of time to realize that you could put down single blocks as long as you held the shift key. My biggest actual issue with the game is likely the enemy AI. Sometimes it's very unpredictable or simply chases you into the wrong direction. Terraria had the same issue, but you'd be chased by an enemy to a branching path, you would go up the path, whilst the enemy would go underneath. And instead of running around to attack you, they would simply stand underneath you in the passage below. It's not the biggest problem in the world, but it can ruin some of the tension that the fights in the game have. Starbound is available for PC, Mac and Linux, and will cost you £11.99, $15 or your regional equivalent. This has been an early look at Starbound. I have encountered the first boss of the game, and I won't ruin it for you, but I haven't gone any further than that. Because of this, I would recommend that you take a look at more of Starbound before making a purchase, to make sure that it's the right kind of game for you, be it from YouTube, Twitch, or any other review site. The game's website and its Steam page will be in the video description below. This was Bates, thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.